Hello? Hello?
Hello.
Hi, Nancy.
Hello?
I was having technical difficulties. I apologize. Let me get everybody in.
Just so you know, when I clicked on the link in the meetings portal, it just created another PDF window. It didn't go to Zoom.
You clicked on the Zoom link?
Yeah,
That's bizarre.
it was weird.
For some reason, there, I've got it. All right, so Andy.
Good evening.
Hello.
Hello, can you hear me? Well, that's good.
Can't see you though, Dugan.
Well, that's because I have my camera turned off. Are you kidding? Really?
You could at least get a cat or something.
We need to know if you're smiling or frowning.
My volume.
Let's see. Mr. Taylor, give me a second. Spencer. Okay, the only one I'm not familiar with all of your new members, but I see you have a Miss Spencer, but I don't see her in the attendees. Okay, and I'm assuming Ariel Taylor is Mr. Taylor on the board?
No, that's my kids watching.
Oh, then I didn't see you over there, Andy. Let me move them back. That was my mistake. Oops, how do I get him back? Just 1 second. No, I can't find him. There we go. There we go. All right. I think that is everyone, unless applicant Dwyer, do you have anyone else that you plan on having testify in your case?
No, I do not. It's going to be myself and my wife here.
Okay, then I think we're good for now.
All right, so we have
Have 6.
6. Okay, so we'll need 5 votes. And we have everyone. So I will call the Board of Adjustments and Appeals meeting to order. Ms. Fenton, if you could please take the roll.
Mr. Rieger? I don't see that. Ms. Schmitz?
Here.
Mr. Friesen?
Present.
Mr. Thompson?
Present.
Mr. Taylor?
Present.
Ms. Hoffman?
Present.
Ms. Spencer? And Chair Finn?
Here.
Thank you.
All right, first up, approval of minutes from January 13th. I need a motion and a second.
I have a question for Dugan. Dugan, I can't remember Englewood's rules. If you weren't present, can you make a motion and vote on minutes?
Dugan, you're on mute. Did Dugan leave?
No.
Dugan, you're on mute. There you go.
Now can you hear me?
Yes.
I love technology. I just want to go back to being a Luddite, but that's okay. You weren't at the last meeting. Did you read the minutes?
Yes, so generally, I think you can.
Yes.
make a Motion and vote on them, but I couldn't remember Englewood's rules.
I think since you've read the minutes and you've looked at them, I believe you can vote on them.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Is it perfect? All right.
Sorry, I missed the second. Was that Andy? Thank you.
So we'll voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. The minutes pass. Approval of findings of fact from case VAR 2020-010 4831 South Jason Street. I need a motion and a second.
Move to approve.
Second.
Voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, approval of finding fact passes. Case procedure, there are 6 members present, therefore 5 affirmative votes are required to grant a variance or appeal. The board is authorized to grant or deny a variance by Part 3, Section 60 of the Englewood City Charter. Anyone aggrieved by a decision rendered by this board may appeal that decision to a court of record. However, such appeal must be made within 30 days of the board's decision. Any approved variance is effective at the end of the appeal period. Building permits for construction associated with an approved variance will not be issued until the appeal period is ended. Building permits must be obtained and construction begun within 180 days of the variance effective date. Procedure for the meeting is that the case will be introduced, overview will be given by staff, applicant will present their request, and reasons the variance should be granted. Proponents will be given an opportunity to speak. Opponents will address the board if present, and if needed, staff will again address the board. The first up, we have a rehearing, and it's case VAR 2020-003, David and Abbey Dwyer, 4831 South Jason Street. Their rehearing request from the January 13th board decision. A rehearing is a little different. The applicant or interested third party, in this case, is the applicant, is going to present evidence that was not available at the time of the hearing that may materially bear on the case. A request for a hearing may be made to the board, which he's done. This request will be in writing. It is, and contain the following, and this is what we'll have to consider: the summary of the new evidence, the reason the evidence was not available to the board at the original hearing, a statement to why it is believed the evidence will materially affect the decision of the board. The board will hear the request and then vote on the issue of granting a rehearing. If a rehearing is granted, a new date will be set for a public hearing, and all posting publications requirements shall apply and be the responsibility of the original applicant. Do I have staff present anything for this? Mr. Charles, you're on mute.
I was waiting for my turn if I needed to be sworn in. I don't think I do for this since it's not a hearing.
That's what I was thinking as well. But Dugan, can you confirm, since it's not a hearing, he does not have to be sworn in, correct?
Correct. He's not introducing evidence. It's not a public hearing. It's really the board's decision as to whether or not to grant the rehearing, and then we would have a public hearing. It has not been noticed for this evening as a public hearing.
Dugan, I have another quick question. So So we have staff and we also have the applicant. Does the applicant speak at this, or are we just going off what was presented with the written record?
You know, I've kind of struggled with that one. This is an appeal from the board's decision, and I think that if you start asking questions of the applicant, then you're almost moving into a public hearing type of issue.
Right.
So my feeling is that the board should vote as to whether or not, based upon what you have in front of you, as to whether or not to grant the appeal, just from what you have in front of you at this point. Because
Okay.
the applicant if the board grants the appeal, then the applicant and staff would both be sworn in. They could present their evidence and argument as to why the variance should be granted based on the new evidence. And that, you know, protects everybody's due process rights.
Okay, one last question. Do we have a discussion of this, or is this just a straight up vote out of the gate that we don't have any discussion and the board just votes?
I think if you can limit your discussion a little bit, unless if a board member has something they're concerned about, certainly I think the board could at least entertain that with regard to the request for an appeal or the rehearing. But I think it needs to be limited to just whatever that might be. I know that's kind of an open-ended question. Sorry.
No, that's fine. And then do we need a motion to hold the vote, or we just have the straight up vote? And this is my last question.
I think you should do a motion in a second and then vote.
Okay. Board, do we have any general questions right now? Everything has been, should be in your packet. And if we don't have any questions, if I could get a motion and a second. And the motion should be made, and I guess if a rehearing should be granted.
I'll move that the board grant a rehearing in, oh, where is the case number? Help.
It's VAR 2021-003.
Thank you. In VAR 2021-003.
So this is the present case, and that's the rehearing of 2020-010. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. We have a motion and a second. So we have the material that was presented. And so we need to vote on if we feel like there's going to be a rehearing based on the new evidence and what was presented.
All right, Ms. Schmitz?
I vote yes. After reviewing the request, there's facts that I think the board should look at in a new hearing.
Okay, Mr. Friesen?
I guess I'm not opposed either way. I don't see anything that really changes my mind based on it. I think I would vote no.
Okay. Mr. Thompson?
Just in order to hear some of the new facts and qualifications, I'll vote yes.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor?
I voted no. I didn't see the reason why the evidence wasn't available at the last hearing.
All right, Ms. Hoffman?
I'll vote yes. I think the hearing is in order.
And Chair Finn?
I vote no, because the one thing I couldn't figure out is why it wasn't presented at the last hearing, the drop off, which would make it unique.
Motion fails 3-3.
Okay, on to the next case. So this is a public hearing. So this is a public hearing for case VAR 2021-002. Jason and Stacey Colson at 2925 South Bannock Street. They're requesting a variance to encroach into the side setback up to 3.1 feet and the bulk plane up to 4 feet for an addition to an existing house. We got publication, which was sent out. So we have verification. Staff, if you could be sworn in and present, please.
Could you give me one moment, Chair Finn?
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to make sure I get the applicants in. I have a Jared Carlin. Is that supposed to be Colson, or do I have the wrong person?
No, it should be Stacey Colson.
Okay, let me.
Yeah.
So, Ms. Colson, do you have anyone else that you are thinking you will have speak in your behalf? Okay, we'll just go forward. Okay, let me get on video here. All right, Mr. Charles, if you'll raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that you will tell the truth in this proceeding before the Board of Adjustment and Appeals?
I do.
Please state your name.
Will Charles. Okay, let me grab a couple things real quick and share my screen with you guys. All right. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay.
On neighborhood notifications, correct?
Yes. Although now I can't find my notes. Hold on. Let me stop sharing for a second.
I think Dugan would be more than happy to help you with the technology.
Yeah, it appears that Google has just failed me. Almost back there. Okay, sorry about that. One more time, sharing the screen. All right. Okay. So this, like you said, is a variance 2021-002. This case probably looks familiar to some of you. The board heard this case back in, I believe it was December of 2020. After the case was heard, the applicant took the information to their engineer, and after further review, their engineer came to the conclusion that a condition to limit the height of the structure to the same height as, or limit the height of the new portion of the structure to the same height as the existing structure would not be feasible to meet the minimum ceiling heights in the structure. Unfortunately, they had passed their 30 days to request a rehearing, so they applied for a full new variance. The original variance was approved by the board, I believe by a unanimous decision. But I'll go ahead and go through it again just in case anyone wasn't there, or if you guys have any questions. So this applicant is requesting a variance to encroach the side setback by 3.1 feet and the bulk plane by up to 4 feet for a second-story addition to an existing house. This is a variance to table 1661.1 and section 1661G of the Englewood Municipal Code. This property, along with all the surrounding properties, are zoned R2B. This property is a 6,250 square foot parcel with about a 1,840 square foot single family residence on the property. As the board knows, the variance can be granted if the 4 criterion are met. First criterion is that unique physical conditions exist, such as size, shape, location, topography, or surroundings which are peculiar to the land or structure involved, which deprive the applicant of privileges enjoyed by the other properties in the vicinity. The location of the existing structure is what makes this property unique. Due to the location of the existing residence, constructing an addition that meets the required 5-foot setback would require a significant jog in the sidewalls. That would also take away symmetry and complicate the framing and structural abilities of the structure. The second criterion is that a variance is consistent with the intent of the zone district regulations to secure public health, safety, and welfare. The variance, if granted, would not create any public health, safety, or welfare issues. Third criterion is that the variance will not permanently impair the use or development of adjacent conforming properties or alter the essential character of the neighborhood. This neighborhood is comprised of developed low-density residential developments. Proposition would not permanently impair current or future conforming properties. As proposed, the proposed addition would not encroach further into the side setback than what is currently existing. Then the fourth criterion is that the variance is not a self-imposed difficulty or hardship. The variance request was not found to be a self-imposed difficulty or hardship, as the variance is based on where the current structure is existing. Staff recommends the variance request be approved for the reasons stated, and I'm happy to answer any questions you guys might have.
Any questions for staff?
Randy, you're on mute if you're asking me a question.
Sorry, that was me.
Well, both of you were on mute and asking me questions.
Yeah. But I was just curious, we approved the first time last December to maintain the existing roof line. So
Correct.
I was looking for a detail that shows how much it looks like it's so small I can't see what that measurement is that they're requesting above the existing roof line.
Yeah. From this drawing, it looks like it's 1 foot 7.5 inches. And that's for the roof. They do also have this kind of chimney cap to it that does extend further than that. By I think it's about 4 feet is my assumption from the drawings. So
Yeah.
all in all, maybe about 6 feet.
Oh, if I'm not mistaken, Ms. Charles, the chimney is exempted because of its size anyway on regular zoning.
I believe they can project or extend up into above the max height. The max height for the zone district, even with that chimney, it wouldn't hit the 32.
Right. So I don't think the chimney is an issue, is my question. Right. We're really talking about the roof.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, as far as the condition that was set in the previous hearing.
Any other questions for staff at this time? I don't think anyone has any other questions. So if the applicant may please come forward to testify in the case, please state your name and address to the secretary who will administer the oath.
Ms. Colson, if you can unmute and go on video if possible.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can see you as well.
Okay.
Would you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that you will tell the truth in this proceeding before the Board of Adjustment and Appeals?
I do.
Please state your name and address.
Stacey Colson, 2925 South Bannock Street, Englewood, Colorado, 80110.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Colson. So we have everything that you submitted in the packet. If there's anything you'd like to add for us to consider.
Well, I'd like to turn it over to my engineer and my architect, but they've both texted me and telling me that they cannot, they're on the meeting, but you guys cannot see them or hear them. And when I look at all the people that are on the meeting, I can't see them listed either.
If you tell me their names, they could be in the waiting room. What are their names? I can bring them in.
Bob Fritz.
Yep, give me 1 second. And is there another person as well?
Cameron Hemingway.
Yep.
Okay, and Bob is my engineer. Cameron is my architect.
All right. If both of you can unmute and go on video. You are now in the meeting. Mr. Fritz, can you hear? Mr. Fritz?
I don't know why you can't see me, but yes, I finally was able to unmute it. Okay, so.
We can barely hear you though.
I don't know why my video is not there. But anyway, do you have any questions on this?
I'll have to swear you in, so. Is it just me or can the board hear Mr. Fritz?
Not very well, no.
We can barely hear him. His volume's low.
Okay, well, I'm going to trust you. I'm going to swear both of you in at the same time. And Mr. Fritz, if there's any way you can increase your volume, I'm going to trust you raising your right hand. And do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that you will tell the truth in this proceeding before the Board of Adjustment and Appeals?
I do.
Would you both please state your name and address?
Fritz, 6970 South Holly Circle, Suite 100, Centennial, Colorado, 80112.
Cameron Hemingway, 6217 South Poplar Street, Centennial, Colorado, 80111.
Okay, thank you.
So we have the packet that was submitted to the board. So I don't know if you gentlemen have anything you'd like to add for us to consider in addition to what was in the packet.
Well, I believe that Will Charles covered it pretty well, but as you know, from the last meeting in December, they decided that they didn't want the new roof to be any higher than the old roof, and it simply just doesn't work because of headroom. So what we're doing with this meeting is we're trying to get it approved to go much higher. It says 1.7 1/2 higher than the existing roof. We'd like to go significantly higher than that. Right now, that's the estimated height of the new roof. We've had to raise it also because the trusses have a 12-inch heel height, which is necessary to get the amount of, the correct amount of insulation in the attic. So we have to have that 12-inch hill height, which automatically raises it another foot right there. So that's what we're trying to do, is get this whole thing approved. It's been around a long time, as I'm sure you know. And we're anxious to get moving forward with the spring just right around the corner. So if there's anything you can do to push it, approve this, we'd appreciate it. We believe we've gone to an awful lot of work with myself and especially Cameron, making the changes on the drawings to give you all the information you need to make the decision.
Mr. Fritz, did I just hear you say that it would be greater than 1 foot 7 inches, or you said?
That's the estimated, I don't think it's going to be much more than that. It may be an inch or two, but that's, Cameron has drawn it as accurately as possible. But I would rather not be set to that limit, just in case they get out there and they get a transit and they measure it and it's a couple inches higher. We don't want to have to tear something off. So we'd like a little flexibility, and just in case when it's built, it's just slightly higher.
Board, any questions for the applicant, the architect, or the engineer at this point?
So does the bulk plane increase of up to 4 feet that's in the request accommodate that flexibility?
Oh, yes, easily. Easily.
Oh, okay.
Can you hear me? It easily accommodates it.
Okay.
So what is the, I'm having a hard time reading the drawings because they're printed small for me. What's the sill height of the existing building relative to your addition?
The sill height, the bearing of the trusses? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
I'd have to zoom. Cameron,
So,
I don't know if you know that offhand.
I guess, Mr. Charles, can you bring it back up and go to sheet A1.06, please?
So you want to know the bearing height of the existing trusses, sir?
Right.
Okay.
I guess what
Yeah,
I'm trying
I'm
to
scrolling to the packet real quick for you.
what I'm trying to do is see what your floor-to-floor heights are,
Right. Yeah.
what your bearing heights are, and I didn't print them at a large scale, so.
Yeah. Sheet A104 should show some floor-to-floor heights, and should show some 8'1" ceiling heights as well. The floor-to-floor from level 1 to 2 is roughly 9'11" 3/4. And then we have an 8'1" ceiling height on the second story as well. So the existing truss bearing heights would be somewhere around that 8'1" existing from level 1 to just below the level 2 indicator, right there on the right side of the sheet.
Let me know if I need to go somewhere different on this. Is this what you're looking for?
Yeah, yeah, you can zoom in there and you should be able to see it from there on the right side of that dimension string. So that first dash mark right by the entry steps note is level 1, and then level 2 would be the new finished floor level 2. Right there, that second dash line coming across. Yep.
Yeah,
So
this one's 1 foot 10 inches, if that's what the question is.
Yep.
Right, and so why does that have to be so deep? Because you're free spanning the whole space?
That's right. We're using 22-inch TJIs to go across wall to wall there. And Bob, maybe you might be able to expand a little more on that, but we had didn't want to necessarily bear on the in the center of the building without, putting a column somewhere or something like that to kind of limit the floor plan, the current floor plan with that structural addition.
Yes, the owners early on didn't want any columns on that upper floor. They wanted to clear span it. Actually, between the main floor and the upper floor, they wanted to clear span it. So that's why we have the deep joists. Then, of course, the trusses clear span it up above as well.
I guess I'm trying to understand why you couldn't still do a beam within that and have a smaller joist size. Because you've got an existing wall that's 12 or 15 feet back from the front.
Well, at this point, the floor beam is, it's all been designed. There's really no reason to, because they wanted to clear span it. That's part of the design criteria.
So I've got a second question then, it has to do with the second floor and whether you looked at the option of doing a lower sill height closer to head height and doing more of a scissor truss type thing to give you the volume of space in order to get the roofs to line up.
Well, on the upper roof, those trusses are scissor trusses.
Say again?
The roof trusses above are scissor trusses.
They're not shown that way on the sections.
Yeah, they should be bottom chord trusses. And I think some of the we went to that for a cost standpoint for the owner to kind of keep the budget down less necessarily. And we could look at that. I think that the heel height still gets to be a little bit tricky down there with trying to get some insulation and proper ventilation through the scissor.
So can you go to, it's A1-06. And zoom in on that, the bottom portion. And this
Just
is
on
what
this?
yep. So this is what you gentlemen were talking about, is that this, because there, that floor thickness, it looks like it's 1 foot 10 inches.
Yeah, 110 3/4.
Yep. And so there's actually a step up from the existing floor into the second story. Is that correct?
That's correct. And to maintain that head height, to make it,
what kicked it up. The
yep.
roof.
Yeah, that's right. We didn't want to make it too short, to make it feel pretty heavy in there, and comfortability, and also just structurally and insulation wise. It makes sense to make it an 8'1" typical height.
Any other questions for the applicant, engineer, or architect from the board? If so, speak up, because I can't see everyone on my little screen. All right, I don't believe we have any other questions for the applicant, the engineer, or the board.
I might push a little bit harder on that floor thickness part. Just because I feel like it's not particularly our issue that the floor thickness was decided to be that. The fact that it's already designed is not our issue. So I'm just trying to understand why that couldn't be designed with a beam that makes that shorter, because you certainly have bearing wall points in the floor plan.
Well, that was a request early on from the owner that they wanted to clear span it. Excuse me, they wanted to clear span it. That was what they wanted as part of their criteria.
Hey, Bob, isn't the existing structure already perimeter load bearing?
Yes,
So we don't necessarily have a whole lot to bear on in the center. Is that true?
Yeah, there's a beam there, but it's not designed for any loads other than the main floor.
Any other questions from the board? Don't see any other questions. Okay, I think we're done with the applicant, the engineer, and the architect for the time being. Are there any persons present who wish to speak in favor of this request? Ms. Fenton?
We have quite a list. There's no one here in person, but if you will be patient, I will need to ask each one of these folks if they're here for this case or the next one. So I have someone whose number ends in, who's called in. Last four digits of your phone number is 9837. Do you wish to speak in this case or the next case?
And it looks like they're on mute.
I've asked to unmute. Okay, we'll go to the next one. I have another phone call in at 6903, ending at 6903. Do you wish to speak? Okay. I have another phone call, one ending in 1723. Do you wish to speak in this case? Okay. I have call in user number 1. Do you wish to speak in this case? All right. Mr. Young, do you wish to speak?
No.
Okay, thank you. Then I have, nope. I have Jared Carlin. Do you wish to speak in this case?
No, I don't.
Okay, thank you. Oh, now oh, there we go. Mr. Wickstrom, is that how you say your name? Do you wish to speak?
No, ma'am.
Thank you. Ms. Dunlop, do you wish to speak?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McFadden, do you wish to speak?
No.
Okay, then we have no public for this case.
All right, so we have no one to speak in favor or opposition. Staff, do you have any additional comments for this?
I do not have any additional comments unless there are additional questions.
Are there additional questions for staff?
I have a question. Can you clarify exactly what the variance was that we granted in December?
Sure. So the variance that was granted in December was granted with conditions. So the variance itself, let me make sure I get the proper wording. It's the same wording as the current one. So it was a variance to encroach the side setback by up to 3.1 feet and the bulk plan by up to 4 feet for a second story addition to an existing house, with the condition that the new addition not be taller than the existing structure.
Okay, so the request is essentially to eliminate the condition.
Correct.
And if we do not grant that variance, the original variance still stands in place and they can redesign under the original variance.
That would be my understanding. Dugan, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on that front.
You are correct. It would, the original variance that was decided or approved by the board would stand.
Yeah.
Any additional questions for staff at this point? I do not see any questions. So the public hearing is now closed. Is there a motion and a second?
I move that we approve a variance in case VAR 2021-002 to encroach into the side setback by up to 3.1 feet and the bulk plane by up to 4 feet for a second story addition to an existing house. This is a variance to table 16-6-1.1 and section 16-6-1-G of the Englewood Municipal Code.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Board discussion. Any thoughts?
I guess from my point of view, it is still possible to match that existing roof. The criteria for how they decide to do that is not under our control. I mean, it would take different floor heights and it would take some thought on how what the bearing heights would be on that roof. But it's not impossible to do. So I guess I don't see a reason that we shouldn't be expecting him to stay within our requirements. I would say that on my side, I didn't have a problem with the height, but I would have a problem with not meeting the existing eaves, which would be maintaining the same bulk plane. The overall height is not an issue to me. In other words, if the north roof followed the same roof pitch as the existing, I don't care what the south side does. So it'd be a little bit different in how we worded that. That's my 2 bits.
Can I comment on that?
No, I'm sorry, sir, this is the public meeting is closed. Any other discussion, thoughts?
I'm struggling with the first criterion because a lot of this was related to the existing structure, and because it is exceeding in the ways that Randy described, I'm struggling with that first criterion mostly.
I mean, I agree. I'm kind of back to where we were before. I think that we've made exceptions to keep the same lines, which we'd be doing on the side setback, but I have a problem going higher, which is where we were the first time. And I think that's why we put the condition on. Any other thoughts, discussion?
Mr. Finn, actually, and Mr. Friesen, I agree with you. I remember the discussions that we had to keep the existing profile. And I'm not an engineer, not an architect, but at the same time, you know, I think there could be some sort of alterations in order to maintain that existing profile.
Any other input from discussion, questions, comments from staff? I don't see any. So I think at this time we need to vote.
Ms. Schmitz?
I vote yes. On the first criterion, I know, you know, other things may be possible, but the you know, just on the we often struggle with how much effort is needed to be made to work within the existing rules and how far an applicant is required to go. The testimony described the roof height in the new plan and proposal is required by the insulation and the structure of the building and the support that it has existing and needs to be added to add the second story. So I don't think additional efforts are required to meet that criteria. I think if they are required, it would be an issue with the applicant not enjoying the privileges enjoyed by others. So I think that's met. Second criteria isn't an issue and it's met. The third criteria, it won't permanently impair the use or development of adjacent conforming properties. And the fourth criteria, it wasn't a self-imposed difficulty or hardship.
Mr. Friesen?
I vote no. I think the first criterion, while it is unique in the existing house location, that doesn't preclude the solutions that are required to meet that condition. Second criterion is met. Third criterion is met, and I do feel like the fourth criterion, it is a self-imposed difficulty by the way it's designed.
Thank you. Mr. Thompson?
Actually, I'm going to deny too. First criteria, still kind of questionable on it. I guess the answers weren't completely given. Second criteria, it's okay. Third criteria, okay with. Fourth criteria, not being self-imposed. Again, I think there are other additional things that might be able to be done. So I'm going to deny.
All right, Mr. Taylor?
I voted no because I did not see that the first criterion was met. The placement of the structure is close to the side, but we are now expanding where it is not conforming with the existing zoning if we were to approve this variance. So I found that first criterion was not met.
All right, Ms. Hoffman?
I voted no for the reasons stated by Board Member Friesen.
And Chair Finn?
I also voted no for the reasons stated by Mr. Friesen, Mr. Taylor, and Mr. Thompson.
Motion fails 1-5.
So this case is now closed. We will go to the next case.
And if you will give me a moment.
Absolutely.
I need to bring in all of our people.
Excuse me, is there anything I can say at this point?
No, sir. I'm sorry. The meeting's closed.
What you just imposed is impossible.
Sir, I'm sorry.
Okay.
The meeting's closed.
You should have listened.
Sorry, I just muted him. I'm trying to get everybody out and in. And where's Mr. I think Mr. Hoffman or Hemingway just left. Okay, so we have a number of people coming in for the next meeting. So this may take me a bit, so please be patient with me. There's Tina. Wade, I believe I got everyone. Did I miss anyone from your team?
I believe you have everybody that I know of. Allison or Chris, do you know if there's anybody else joining you tonight?
I think who we've got up on the screen is a good start. I think that's most of us.
Okay.
That plan to speak anyways.
Yes, I have 5 of you, so let me know if you're expecting anyone else and I will look for them. All right, Chair, I believe everyone's out and everyone's in.
All right, the public hearing for case number VAR2021-001. The applicant is Norris Designs. The property is 351 Englewood Parkway. It's a variance to reduce the required ground floor commercial space from the required 50.1% to 0% to develop the property as a multifamily residential community. Case is now open. We have verification of publication and posting. Staff, if you could please get sworn in and give us an overview.
Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that you will tell the truth in this proceeding before the Board of Adjustment and Appeals?
I do.
Please state your name.
Wade Burkholder. Good evening, board. Give me 1 second to share my screen. Trusting everybody can see my screen. Chair Finn, you just reviewed this first slide for us. Applicant Norris Design on behalf of Kimco Englewood 683 Incorporated. The project address is 351 Englewood Parkway, and there is a request for the removal of the ground floor commercial space from the required 50.1% to 0% for redevelopment of the property as multifamily residential. This is a variance to section 16-6-1.c.4 of the Englewood Municipal Code. And there is a second request with this application, and that is an extension to the 1-year expiration of the Board of Adjustment variance approval from the 1 year to 4 years per section 16-2-16.g. The property we're talking about in this application is located where you see the large black star. It is a 6.25 acre site bounded on the north by Floyd Avenue, to the west by South Elati, to the east by South Cherokee Street, and there is a separate parking area to the south that you'll see on the next slide that is owned by Hamden Place LLC and not part of this application. You can see the surrounding zoning. This is in the MUB1. Properties to the east and south are within that same zone. Properties to the north across Floyd is in the R1C zone. And the properties to the west is within the City Center PUD, which is in the beginning stages of a redevelopment project as well. This is the existing condition picture of the site. It is the Hobby Lobby shopping center. There are other tenants in the center, including a Dollar Tree. There is a liquor store and a few other smaller tenants within this location. This is the aerial of the property outlined in the heavy red line. You can see to the sort of top of the screen is Floyd, Elati, and Cherokee on the west and east. And you can see better in this picture the parking lot to the south that is not part of this project tonight. So as mentioned, this proposal for this site is part of a redevelopment plan. It's a conceptual development plan at this point. What is proposed is 2 buildings, one a 3-story and one a 4-story multifamily residential building with a 2-story parking garage structure located centrally on the site. And at present, there are 275 dwelling units proposed. So at next glance, in your staff report, there are the 4 criteria that variances may be passed by the Board of Adjustment and Appeals based on representations in the application and at tonight's hearing. You do have the 4 criteria there. I will not read through those. You have them before you. However, I will just mention that this site being adjacent to the City Center redevelopment site, as well as located within the newly formed DDA, Downtown Development Authority District. The possibility of reactivating the site and bringing residential use to this property will in staff's opinion, only spur the existing commercial uses in the surrounding area. The infusion of residential properties in this area will be the catalyst, we believe, to connect the city center parcel with the downtown Main Street on Broadway. This being an intermediary site that, once everything hopefully redevelops in a number of years, will be a complementary project connecting two of the central business hubs within the city of Englewood. That said, the Community Development Department staff is recommending that the variance request to reduce the required ground floor commercial from 50.1% to 0% be approved for the reasons stated in the staff report. And additionally, staff is supportive of the 4-year time lapse, 4-year lapse date, should the Board of Adjustment and Appeals be inclined to approve the variance request, in order to accommodate the timeframes for existing leased tenants on the property. So the applicant is really looking at beginning phases of this redevelopment plan. They have obviously the leased tenants on the site right now. So they would like to go ahead and have some assurity moving into the future that they can get this variance taken care of so that they can further their redevelopment plans. And as you, the board knows, many of you, this requirement in the code is one that the staff has and is proposing for removal during the code rewrite process, which is in its beginning stages as well. We don't anticipate any new UDC, Unified Development Code, to be finalized and approved by City Council until likely mid-2022. So again, while we have targeted this requirement for removal, it is still on the books, and thus is why the applicant is here asking for the variance for its removal this evening. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you all may have.
Questions for staff?
Wade, this also could go through the PUD process and be formed this way, is that correct?
This is otherwise a by right use, so it would not need to go through the planned unit development process.
Well, I mean, that the PUD process could also allow it to have this change to the ground floor use, or not?
I mean, that would be a tool, but in an otherwise by right use for the property, going through the full PUD doesn't make the most sense, because the density is set, you know, the parking set, the height set, and that is all within the current proposal that the applicant is working with. I mean, to answer your question, yes, it could go through the PUD, but for one criterion such as this, it may not be the most logical route to take.
What's the typical time that a PUD takes to get approved, or is there a typical time?
It's typically 8 months to a year.
Okay. And then my other question is, I believe that live work dwellings on the ground floor would satisfy the commercial space. Is that something that's been looked at?
I will have to defer to the applicant, as this is a conceptual plan. We really haven't discussed full uses and such.
I have a question along the same line. I guess I'm wondering why there can't be ground floor retail similar to the other units that are there, you know, where Nixon's is and those. I mean, that's sort of a model. Is that a better question for the applicant?
I would prefer they answer that. Again, it is their current development plan to be a fully multifamily residential project. And I believe, well, I'll let the applicant speak. I don't want to speak for them.
Okay, I'll direct that question there. Thanks.
So, Mr. Burkholder, if they were having to do the 50%, I'm a little confused how, if we don't give them the variance, where does it take effect on Cherokee and Elati? Because the parking lot is not a frontage, right? The parking lot to the south.
That's correct. So it would go, the variance would take effect on the residential buildings they're proposing. So it essentially would apply to those two buildings, and it would state that there would not be any requirement for ground floor commercial, which would otherwise be required, yes, within any buildings that they're wanting to build.
But basically on the frontage of Cherokee and on the frontage of Elati, right?
And yes, that would be where it would be, yes. Because their buildings are set back from Floyd a bit. So commercial on Floyd probably wouldn't make a whole lot of sense either.
My second question is, are there build to requirements on this property with this zoning or not?
There's not.
I had a question about whether, I know that City Council pulled back where this requirement was in place. What it used to be over more of the MUB2 zoning. And I was just trying to remember where it's still in place, and because I think we used to see these a lot more. I don't know if you have any insight on that.
Currently, it still exists within all of the MUB1 zoning. What we're proposing is that this requirement remain in the 3,300, 3,400 blocks of Broadway, so that we can assure there's a commercial presence right on Broadway. But staff is requesting through this rewrite of the code that all other parts of the MUB1 be removed from this requirement.
And have there been any market studies or anything like that as part of this work that would help justify this difficulty in this case?
Well, I think a lot of the situations we find ourselves in is that, 50% ends up being such a small number and a small square footage that the quality of the commercial tenant in these buildings really doesn't meet the goal of this requirement that we were hoping it would meet. So that's why, you're looking at, maybe a small coffee shop, like was mentioned, which is very valuable, very popular coffee shop. But when you're looking at some of these MUB1 properties that are off the main arterials, you start really getting into difficulty attracting commercial tenants in there that will be viable. And so that's where we're getting into the struggle with this requirement.
Thanks.
Any other questions for staff at this time? All right, Mr. Burkholder, I think we're done with you for the time being. We have numerous applicants. Ms. Fenton, I'm not sure how you want to handle this.
I'm going to swear them all in at one time.
One time. So if they can, whoever's going to speak, take part so you can speak.
So yes, if you're going to speak, if you would come off mute and go on video, and I'll swear you all in. And then as you speak, if you just the first time state your name and your address, that would be great. All right, here we go. Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that you will tell the truth in this proceeding before the Board of Adjustment and Appeals?
I do.
I do.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm not sure who drew the short straw.
Me.
All right, you
I'm
have
gonna
the
go
floor.
ahead and share my screen if that's all right. We do have a quick presentation.
Absolutely, and we have everything that you guys submitted, so there's no need to go over a lot of that stuff.
Got it. All right, can everyone see that?
Yes.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you, everyone. Good evening. Thank you for taking the time to hear our request tonight. My name is Allison Wendland with Norris Design. We're located at 1101 Bannock Street, Denver, Colorado 80204. And like I said, we've got just a brief presentation that we're going to go through to give you some additional detail. And I'm actually going to turn it over to Chris Simoniello. He is the Director of National Development for Kimco Realty, who are the property owners. So he'll go through some additional background and detail into our request.
Thank you, Allison. Good evening, everybody. Chris Simonello, Kimco Realty, 500 North Broadway, Suite 201, Jericho, New York, 11753. I am in New York right now. My children are sleeping, but they've been known to get up in the middle of the night, so I do apologize if you see some little ones scurrying behind me. So before we begin, and if you permit me, I just want to give a brief presentation about who Kimco is. A lot of people, even though we're a nationally recognized company, a lot of people don't know about us, our history in Englewood Plaza, and the state of retail, which is really why we're here right now. So Kimco, we were founded in
Sir, I would ask you to keep this as brief as possible because this won't have any bearing on the case.
Sure. So why don't I just skip to the Englewood Plaza and the state of retail. So Englewood Plaza was built in the 1980s across from the Cinderella Mall, now the Walmart. We purchased the center in 1998 after the mall was demolished. As part of the mall redevelopment that created a new city grid and to provide Walmart a deeper parking field, West Girard Avenue was relocated to the front of Englewood Plaza and renamed Englewood Parkway. The parking field is not controlled by Kimco and is utilized by the medical office building for overflow parking. As you can imagine, this poses a great challenge to our center by impacting visibility and access. So much so that we have some struggling retailers that are there right now whose sales trail that of their national average. The center lacks control over the parking fields that front the center. The creation of Englewood Parkway made the retail buildings really feel far from the road and created atypical access for our standard neighborhood shopping center. The retail core of Englewood shifted to West Hampton Avenue, 1 block south of the site, and South Broadway, 1 block to our east, excuse me. In plain terms, our center is on the wrong street for a retail project. We've been in the shopping center business for over 60 years, and over that time, we've seen the retail landscape shift and the desires of consumers change. While grocery stores, discounters, and experiential retailers have done well over the past decade, the moms and pops have struggled, as we can see by the chronic vacancies on Englewood Parkway. To bring it back to our request to eliminate the retail requirement at our site, requiring retail at our center is not a viable option, even if the demand existed, which it does not, and we did solve the visibility concerns. Today, and with the acceleration of omni-channel retail trends caused by COVID-19, there is undoubtedly a growing demand for live, work, play environments through dynamic residential projects. The social elements of multifamily projects, the sense of community this type of development creates, and the synergies that are born out of the combination of uses within a market make these projects highly desirable. In short, we believe multifamily serves as a great complement to surrounding retail and other commercial uses within this market. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jeff Wickstrom of Evergreen, and we'll certainly be here to answer any questions after the presentation.
Good evening. How are you guys? And I will take Mr. Flynn's request at heart and be very brief here. But Evergreen is a company that's been around for 45 years. We are active in the Front Range in both retail and multifamily. We have something like 7 multifamily communities being developed up and down the Front Range today. And we are also the most active grocery anchored retail developer in the state. So something that we know a little bit about both sides of this question. So yeah, Allison, go ahead and flip to the next slide. So real quickly, Wade did a great job of describing the property, approximately 275 units in this current plan. Is the diagonal line that runs across the property is the little Dry Creek drainage way. So we had to design our way around that. The buildings are 3 and 4 stories. And I think probably the most important thing of the retail, of the multifamily, is that should generate somewhere between 400 and 500 residents to live right here. And those residents will be customers of the adjacent retail. On our retail development side, you know, in our grocery anchored properties, we've had a significant reduction in the amount of inline retail that we've been building with those. In the old days, we would generally build 40,000 square feet of retail next to a King Soopers or a Safeway or other major chain. And today that number has shrunk to about 10. And that goes to Chris's comment about the real fall off in the amount of mom and pops, that mom and pop shops that are operating today and succeeding. He also mentioned Englewood Parkway, the Art Walk apartments and formerly Weingarten buildings across the street. You know, if you walk up and down that block, 30% of those spaces are dark. I actually officed 20 years ago in the ground floor of that building because when it was built, we couldn't find enough retailers to go into that space. So the number of retailers that want to be in a not off a main drag, kind of back in the corner, and is just not great. And the quality of those retailers has also been challenging. You don't tend to get a lot of national credit tenants along those lines. There was a question about you know, where if there were retail required in this property, yeah, it would end up on Elati and Cherokee because Englewood Parkway, formerly Girard, has been separated from the property with the relocation of Englewood Parkway. So neither of those are great retail spaces as well. There was a question about live work. I have some experience with that, and where we've looked at that and or built it in the past, it's really not done very well. The only places that I've actually seen live work is in a CBD, a very dense urban setting. Even the live work at Belmar, when that was built, had a real challenge filling up, and I don't even know if they're full today. So, Allison, next slide, please. So again, just reiterating, we request that the amount of retail, ground floor retail in these properties be reduced from 50 to 0%, and that variance remain in effect for a period of 4 years. And this is to help Kimco work with their current tenants who have leases that run longer than the 1-year term of the property. So, Allison, we have looked at the approval for a criteria. We think that we're consistent with all of those, and thankfully have the support of staff on that as well. And with that, I'll be quiet and answer any questions you may have.
Board, questions for the applicants?
Can you tell us a little more about the 4-year request?
The FOIA request is to manage the leases in the property. We have leases that run, and Chris, I don't know if you want to jump in here, but there are leases on that property that run at least 3 and I think into 4 years. And so we just, we want to get the variance done so that we can, spend some money on actual design of the property. Because it doesn't make sense to do that if we don't know what the solution will ultimately be. And so we'll be ready to come out of the ground as soon as we possibly can.
Yeah, just to be brief, Jeff, you hit the nail on the head. We have leases, you know who the tenants are at the center that expire in 2024 and 2025.
If you have leases for 4 years, then why can't you wait until the revisions to the LDO when this requirement potentially will be eliminated? Or why can't you go through a rezoning process?
So the intent is for us to get started on design of the property. And that is the $1 million question, literally. And so we really need to know that we're going to be able to build what we're going to be able to build before we get into that design process. And it takes time. The design process takes time, the approvals take time.
Agreed, but you have 4 years, and so that's more than enough. I mean, even if you waited a year, you would still then have 3 years to do your design work. So I guess I'm not understanding within 4 years that you couldn't go through it, either wait for the LDO to be updated or go through a rezoning process.
Yeah, if I may take that, I mean, just because we have 4 years left on the leases. I mean, these tenants may come back, we may renegotiate them. We don't know. We would just like that flexibility. So like Jeff said, we know what we're going to be building or what we can build so we can design it properly and make the best decision for our company, the community, our shareholders.
Are you saying that the leases may be up sooner? Is that what you're saying?
The leases are not up sooner. It's just,
okay.
Things can change in retail in a month's time, in 2 months' time. So, the 4 years gives us the most flexibility as possible to plan and to really make a viable project.
That doesn't mean that it will be 4 years before the project is developed. As Chris is alluding to, you really don't know what's going to happen with retail and the retail base. So Kimco is trying to get this thing set up and ready to go. And if it ends up being on the shelf for a year while we're, as we're waiting at the tail of the leases, so be it. But I do think, Chris, don't you have some, I mean, not everybody expires in 2024, right? You've got expirations in the 2 or 3 years preceding.
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct. I mean, it's not. We have lease expirations that are a year out, 2 years out, 3 years out. So I mean, it's not just a flat 4 years.
So once your plans are done, that some work on the ground could start before all the tenants are out of there?
It's possible.
Oh, okay.
Certainly possible.
I have a curiosity question more than anything. On the existing Hobby Lobby farm or whatever it is now, where does that dry creek go through? Because that building's built all the way across there. I don't have a issue with
yeah,
that.
it actually sits under the Hobby Lobby building today. It's a really really interesting easement. It's very old. Well, very old. It goes back to the 80s. Yeah, I've never seen one quite like this before. It allows buildings on top of it. It's not your current easement situation.
So you're just opting not to go over the top of it except for the garage?
Yeah, so even on the garage, what we've done is we've, as much as you can do at this level of design, but we have laid out the garage to have the columns supporting the second level straddle that easement. So instead of laying it, so we'll have, of course, the ground floor parking, which is certainly no worse than what's already there with the parking lots today. But we worked around it, and that also kind of explains the layout of the two buildings as we tried to create as much frontage on Englewood Parkway and make that nice presentation, but still work our way around that easement and that drainage. That is a big culvert, guys.
I had one other question. You got one of these drawings that said something amenity on it. What are the thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a clubhouse. That's most apartment complexes have a clubhouse that's an amenity for the residents as well as a leasing center. You generally want to put that front and center where people can find it. Art Walks is right in the center of the block, and you go through the clubhouse and out to the pool in the back. So it presents it's a nice presentation. It's a tool for leasing, and it's an amenity for the residents. And if you want, I'd be happy to talk about what kind of things we put in those, but I was trying to stay brief as I could.
That's fine. Thank you.
You bet.
Any questions?
Sorry about that.
No, please.
Another question on the residents to the north of the proposed development. What would be, I noticed that the 3-story, I think, is closer to the north property line as opposed to the 4-story. But I'm just wondering if you've done any cases or renderings for the people that are on the north side looking south to the proposed location.
Yeah, so not yet, and we're frankly not that far in the design. So what we've really been looking at is the massing that's already allowed and the heights that are already allowed by zoning. And so when we get into design and have elevations, we will absolutely be creating those, having our community meetings and sharing that with everybody.
Any other questions at this point? I don't see any board members with their hand up. Applicants, thank you for now. We might return to you. Ms. Fenton.
Thank you very much, guys. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Fenton.
Yeah.
Other persons present.
Possibly. Let me check and see if they're just watching and listening or if they want to speak. Ms. Vasquez, do you wish to speak in this case? Maybe not. Mr. Carlin, did you wish to speak in this case?
No, ma'am.
Thank you. Mr. Young, did you wish to speak in this case?
No, thank you.
All right. Call in user number 1. Did you wish to speak in this case? Caller ending in 9837. Did you wish to speak in this case? Caller ending in 6903. Did you wish to speak in this case? And caller ending in 1723. Did you wish to speak in this case? I think we're good to go.
Thank you, ma'am. Staff, any additional comments at this time?
I do not have any comments, no, unless you have any questions.
Board, any questions for staff? Any other questions for the applicants? All right, I think that's it. The public hearing is now closed. Is there a motion and a second?
I move to approve case VAR 2021-001 for a variance to reduce the required ground floor commercial space from the required 50.1% to 0% to develop the property as multifamily residential. This is a variance to section 16-6-1.c.4 of the Englewood Municipal Code.
Is there a second?
A second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Board discussion.
Chair, I have a point of clarification. Are we then doing a second motion for the 4-year expiration?
I think, yep. I think if the variance passes, I think then we would address that.
Thank you.
Discussion.
Well, based solely on, is this good for Englewood, which is not one of our criteria. I say yes. I mean, I don't know. It is good for Englewood. The timing bothers me a little bit. We've been talking about this change to the code for as long as I've been on the board, which is a long time. So it's frustrating that this is again before us and not council through that process. But I could justify the first criteria with what we all know are the changes in the market for demand for brick and mortar retail.
Yeah, I think there's some things that are unique to this site that are useful to know beyond just what the city's considering, and not trying to predict what councils may or may not do related to zoning code changes. I mean, I don't want to get into that game, but I think there are some unique things to this site about its history and some of what would make it difficult to put retail in these spaces. So I think that helps a lot, what we heard on the first criterion, definitely.
I certainly agree with that too. The parking lot to the south is extremely unique and extremely prohibitive to doing anything on that site. I think it's a well thought out, unique solution to the thing and helps that area out. But the mistakes that were made in that area were 30 years ago, not now. So.
I don't think that this is appropriate for the board to hear. I think that this, because of the timeline they're looking at, that this could go to council for rezoning or wait for the LDO, for council to address this in the LDO. So I guess I struggle with criterion number 2. I think it absolutely is not consistent with the intent of the zone district regulations. I mean, they're trying to change the use, which is the basis of the zone district regulations. So I would struggle to get to a yes on this.
Yeah, the board has had that struggle on 4 or 5 of these over the years. And
yeah, we haven't heard as many in the MUB1. I think the MUB2 is where we used to hear some more of these. I can't remember exactly, but
yeah, I struggle with 2 as well, where nothing in this world is certain. While I think it'll be changed, I think that's a decision for council. That's kind of where I am with that. And I think it needs to be cleaned up. and it should have been cleaned up a while ago, but we have a year to wait. And I think it's a council job, even though we have seen these before. And I think it would be a little different if it was completely empty. But I think my notes that staff was saying this should possibly be remedied in 2022, which is a year. Any other thoughts, or should we vote?
I guess I'm wondering whether we should reopen it and ask question of Mr. Burkholder as far as city process and so forth. If we vote against it, in other words, how the city council would be approached. I'm not clear on that.
I guess I don't understand what would your question be?
The question is and maybe Dugan knows, but if we reject it and they decide they want to go to council, what is that process?
I think they could take however much time they want. I mean, they're city council, so.
The council can, yes.
I mean, there's a lot of public hearings as part of this process. They've reached out to us, they've reached out to other groups to get feedback. So I mean, while they may have a timeline, I wouldn't predict.
I think a rezone goes through the planning board.
Because the planning commission on that count, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know for big changes.
Well, I guess one of the questions I would have is if we do approve this and even go with the 4 years, and we're doing hypotheticals at this point in time, what would happen if city council didn't get to it in that time allotted? I mean,
I think that's a valid question. Just as my question that what if city council gets to it and says, no, we're not going to remove it, we want to keep it.
Right.
So there were the two other tools. There's the PUD that was mentioned, that could be a path. And then
I had mentioned the live work dwellings.
And rezoning.
I mean, PUD is rezoning.
PUD
is rezoning. So, I mean, to me, I just, we're back to the old discussion of, are we the right tool for the job?
I think back to your question, Chair Finn, about what if the council doesn't make the change to the zone district, then isn't that our answer, that council intends that this be what occurs in the zone district? So we would be sort of usurping their authority here.
Yeah, I mean, to me, again, I think this should be cleaned up by council, but.
Yeah,
And just to bring us, I can't remember which one it was, but on criteria 2, we looked at the intent of the mixed use and we said, aha, rather than having them mixed on top of each other in layers, they are mixed across the other properties in the zone. Now you may or may not find that persuasive, but that is what one way we got through criteria 2.
Any other discussion? And if we would have to vote to reopen. I don't know if we want to do that. And I'm not sure, even if we.
I think I've done the answer well enough.
Yeah, I don't think staff would be able to definitely say is the problem. Any other discussion? or vote? No other discussion, comments? All right, vote. Ms. Fenton.
All right. Ms. Schmitz?
I vote yes on the first criteria. It is a unique piece of property. It's in a unique city. There's retail all around it. So I think that criteria is met. Let's see. A second criterion is it support the intent of the zone district. And what we do know is that the commercial in the bottom level is not working to achieve that intent. So as we have in previous cases, I would say it does achieve that intent by mixing in more people into the middle of what is surrounding commercial to make that happen. Third criterion will not permanently impair the use or development of adjacent conforming properties. I didn't hear anything that would suggest that that was so. Fourth criterion, the variance is not a self-imposed difficulty or hardship. This is always hard to parse one, but I don't think it's a self-imposed difficulty.
Thank you. Mr. Friesen?
I will vote yes as well. I do have a lot of heartburn on number 2. I feel like we're being political pawns, but if we say no, then we're making the developers become political pawns. So I think Ms. Schmitz has stated very well. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Thompson, sorry.
I vote yes, actually for the reasons stated by Mrs. Smith. I agree with her, and actually I agree with Mr. Friesen too. Political pawns, but at the same time, that's not our responsibility to make that decision.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor?
I voted yes for the reasons stated.
Thank you. Ms. Hoffman?
I vote no. I don't think it meets the second criteria, and that I think that it is not consistent with the intent of the zone district. I think the appropriate avenue for the developer is to either rezone the property or wait until the land development ordinance is updated and take it up with council to remove that requirement from the zone district.
Thank you. And Chair Finn?
I voted no for the reasons stated by Ms. Hoffman, as well as I think the tool for this is rezoning. And I think that it's up to city council to clean this up and not our job to clean this up.
Motion fails 4-2.
All right, so that hearing is closed. Staff's choice. Staff.
I have nothing to report further.
City Attorney Dugan.
I have nothing else to add to this evening's entertainment.
Board's choice. Anyone have anything?
Chair Finn, I have a point of order. I have on my agenda that we had election of officers.
Oh, do we? Oh, yeah, look at that. Oh my God, I'm an idiot.
And I
Number
really
7.
make a motion to reappoint you as board chair.
All right, number 7, election of officers. We need to elect a chair.
Are you willing to serve again?
When am I term limited? Am I getting close?
That I do not know. Shelley would.
Can't be term limited because you're so good at it.
Yeah, so enjoyable. I would like to point out.
Change the rule if you are.
I would like to point out that tonight when I mentioned tool, I was going to comment that people have called us tools, but not in the correct way. I'm willing, if you guys want me to do it again, I'm willing to do it again, or if someone else wants to take the reins, I'm happy with either way.
I'd like to have you continue to do it.
It's because no one else wants to do it. That's. All
No,
right.
it's because you're good
there's-
at it.
Oh, yeah, you did awesome.
You're good at it.
So there, I need a motion in a second.
Do we need a whole slate or do we just need, is it chair and vice chair?
We need a chair and a vice chair.
We can do that in one vote, right?
Yeah, we could. So for vice chair,
Randy,
Yeah, since I'm the new guy, who's been the vice chair?
Randy.
Mr.
I
Freeze.
had to do it twice.
Hey, congratulations.
And are you willing to serve again, Randy?
Yes.
All right. I'll make a motion then that we elect Mr. Finn as the chair and Mr. Friesen as the vice chair.
I will
Okay.
second.
All right, we will do a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Doesn't matter. All right. So that's number 7. We have a
Great with the pirate hat.
we have a chair. Nice. I
Your
like
daughter
that.
goes to that school, doesn't she?
I was very happy that no one showed up as Cat tonight.
Yeah. I wish I knew how.
All right. So so I think that's it. I don't know if we have cases next month, but again, thank everyone for their time. I think this is, it's a great volunteer gift that everyone does, and I appreciate it. Other than that, we will see you guys at some point. I'm assuming, Nancy, any clue on when, probably late in the summer, everything would get reopened?
It all depends on the dial, and we're still in yellow at this point, so that's up to the city manager as to when. We're still at 50% capacity at the office, so we will, and city council is still meeting virtually, so until that changes, I suspect the board will continue to meet virtually.
Well, maybe since they are meeting virtually, they can get more done and they can get all the rewrite done sooner. All right. I appreciate everyone's time. We will see you guys in a month or so.
See ya.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.